Hi. Thank you very much. I'm a little nervous and a little stiff, so forgive I'm not like really this stiff in my real life, but I actually pinched a nerve or something, so that's my little sympathy. You can kind of, we have a doctor in the house, so. So thank you so much for having me. Just to give you a little background on me, just for context, not to share my resume or anything, but I'm originally from Northern California, and I moved to Southern California around 2007. And kind of one of the most memorable parts of my entire existence is when I worked on this blimp tour, an advertising blimp. I followed golf and NASCAR. I did that in my early 20s. And actually, on that tour, I visited about 43 states, and I don't think Nebraska was one of them. So I think this is my 44th state that I visited. I'm really excited about that. Anyway, I'm a designer. You can sum up my career paths into kind of two parts. The first line there, Disney, Netscape, Intuit, AOL, Tech TV, those were all kind of turnaround situations, so going into companies like that had big problems, and I tried to help them turn around from a design perspective. And then the second part were big projects that were kind of newer projects, with the exception of Myspace, I guess, which was a turnaround situation. About 3 years ago, after the Myspace project, I co-founded a tech studio in Los Angeles called Science, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then in the middle of all that, I founded this company called This Is Ground. And This Is Ground is based in Los Angeles, and we're a leather goods company. And I think it's either super, super happy accident that I'm speaking next to a cow, or just genius planning on someone's part. But I'm excited about this cow. And the cow doesn't have a name, so that's a little seed I want to plant. Real quick, two of my kind of most favorite creations ever are my two sons. That's Jake on your left. We call him DT, which stands for Dark Thoughts. And then Nick on the right, who is totally obsessed with Steve Jobs. But he's also obsessed with the new boss. And the picture kind of still works a little bit for Tim. So I want to talk a little bit about This Is Ground. This Is Ground was... So after kind of starting Science, which if you guys don't know, Science was responsible for projects like Dollar Shave Club, DogVacay, a whole bunch of kind of super disruptive, super exciting companies. And I was in charge of all the creative at that time. And I just moved to downtown Los Angeles. And in downtown Los Angeles, it's this really amazing area that is just immersed in a lot of makers and craftsmen that have been in the manufacturing space, primarily in apparel and accessories for generations. And so as a digital designer, someone that just really worked on websites and apps and desktop apps my whole life, I really kind of had a lot of fun with that. And I started to teach myself how to make leather goods off of YouTube. And I watched videos by the Tandy company on how to sew leather, and I was just making myself wallets. I was making my friends wallets, and really kind of primarily to teach myself a new craft, but also to save some money, because leather accessories are really expensive. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. And then a friend of mine caught wind of this and was working on a blog post for Refinery 29. And it was, she had challenged me to come up with a new way to organize cables, because everybody has this problem of, tangled cables in their bags. And so it was for Refinery 29. And I had gone to have tacos at a place called Loteria, a grill in LA. And the next morning, after having these tacos and after understanding the problem, it kind of clicked that the taco is a pretty amazing architecture concept, because if you think about it, it's just geometric, like it's a round shape, and when you fold it up, you can fit all kinds of crazy stuff in it. So as I was dreaming about these tacos that I had, and this problem that had a deadline that was looming, I prototyped this cord taco. And I prototyped the very first one actually using aluminum foil and Scotch tape, just because it's super cheap and really malleable. And my friend that commissioned it wasn't that into it. She was like, well, can you make something else? So on the right there, I made sort of a, kind of a basic one too, because she wasn't really expecting me to kind of do something that really stood out. But lo and behold, in this piece on Refinery 29, it became something that people wanted to buy. There was a little bit of a pain point here, and that was that, well, first of all, I had a job, and I had a day job. It was a pretty, it was a big time-consuming job, and so, I didn't really have any capital to start like a business. So, essentially, I used my credit cards as debt. I didn't really want to make inventory because e-commerce or just any kind of companies that sell things, when you get into the inventory game, there's oftentimes a lot of risk, and I wasn't really ready for that risk. And I'll kind of tell you how I came over that in a minute. And then, I couldn't scale my own. I had this inability, which was I had nights and weekends, so I couldn't really make a lot of cord tacos just nights and weekends. So at some point, I had to work with people that could help me. So this is how I did it. After Refinery 29 said, hey, people want to buy this thing called the cord taco, I opened a store on Etsy. I also opened one on Big Cartel. Etsy won, by far. Just go to Etsy. I then leaned on a drop ship partner, and I started pushing myself out to Pinterest. My loft was my warehouse. This is where I, kind of was working, and my kids just thought I was crazy. And but to me, I was kind of sharing, a whole bunch of different lessons on entrepreneurship and hard work. So to get the word out about this, I started to reach out to different blogs. And the Cord Taco's in this interesting space because I think that a lot of it had to do with the name. A lot of it had to do with it was actually solving a real functional problem. And then it kind of straddled this line between something cool and fashionable on the accessory side, but then also on the tech side as well, because it was handling cables. So it attracted people like Cult of Mac and a lot of the Mac Insider blogs and podcasts that you can imagine. A quick pain point. This really shocked me. I thought I'd been very thorough in my research and really was of the mindset that no one else had ever done the Cord Taco, but then someone told me that they saw the Cord Taco in Hong Kong. And I realized that it had been knocked off. They saw it, on Etsy. And that was a real kind of shock to me, and it was one where I didn't know how to react. The sort of designer in me that was really excited that I'd come up with something original, I was offended and hurt, and I kind of, wanted to just say, hey, why don't you come up with something original yourself? And, and they were calling it the Cord Taco. And so after kind of getting through that, I'm not going to Hong Kong, and I'm not going to track these people down like Liam Neeson. I'm just, I just sent them, I would find them popping up on Etsy, and I would send them very polite messages. And for the most part, most people complied. And I never asked people to change their design. I always knew that it was not a design that I was going to sort of hold on to as my own, but I did ask them to come up with another name, and then kind of trademarked and got into all that. So to kind of go further on how I got the word out, because now I'm sensing there's some people that want to copy me, some people that kind of want to present the product in their own way. I then started to email some of my favorite blogs, like Swiss Miss and a few others, and for the most part, everyone that I reached out to was super happy to do it, and I would repay them with sending them samples. So I totally spoiled bloggers with samples, because the reality is these Cord Tacos are not that expensive to make, and so to send Swiss Miss a bunch of Cord Tacos for their office was probably $10, and which was great because I didn't really have the capital to do customer acquisition in sort of the normal way where you would have to spend money on tactics, et cetera. So the turning point, does anyone have Etsy, by the way, on the Etsy app on their phone? Do you sell stuff on Etsy? When you sell something on Etsy, you know that it goes cha-ching, and you get really excited. You immediately see what you sold and see how much money you got there. One Monday morning, my phone, it sounded like I'd hit the jackpot. It was just cha-ching, 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 and smoke started to come out of it, and I got really excited. So I went to Google Analytics to look to see where all this traffic was coming from. And lo and behold, Uncrate, one of my favorite blogs ever, who I reached out to just to give him a tip, had actually posted. And Uncrate is probably, I would say, just the best channel to reach primarily men with money to spend. And women. I mean, it's great for everyone. It's just these really crazy, extravagant, eccentric kind of things. And I was really excited to be on there, and it really helped the business. I think that week I sold $20,000 worth of cord tacos. So you can imagine with this tool, and this tool only, and 2 kids that were really into Xbox, like I had a problem. Which brings me to my next pain point, which is I literally have, I'll show you, scars, and and there are times when I realized what I was doing, and I would start, God, the second bottle of wine started to kick in, and not a good idea to mix wine and cut blades, and so, not to mention the fingerprints that I was losing, and I was packing up bags, and it was exciting, but really, really hard work, and I'm not complaining, it was required. It was part of the whole process of scaling this business, and I had to feel that pain to then kind of go out and find this guy. So this guy, Alex, the beauty of being downtown LA is that he had these big machines that were on hydraulics called clickers. And essentially that die that you see there with the 2 wooden circles, that's essentially the cookie cutter. I'm sure some of you know this, but that's the die that you, if you want to get into mass production, you then use this clicker to start clicking out several tacos. So luckily I had access to Alex there. Like I said, customer acquisition was 100% fueled by bloggers and social media. It wasn't that was my strategy necessarily, it's just that that's all I could afford to do. $10 sending it to Swiss Miss versus spending $1,000 on some campaign, it was just a no-brainer. And actually, I think in the long run, when you build a business a bit more organically by appealing to the hearts and minds of tastemakers, and you do that, you'll probably end up with a stronger brand anyway. So I actually think that was great. So after the cord taco, I started to hear from people saying, hey, great, this is awesome to take to the gym, but I travel, and I'd like something that would handle more than 1 cord. And so I came up with this product, and initially this thing was called the cord cubby or something, and then my friend kind of hit me in the back of the head and said, you idiot, like the Mexican food thing, it's the cordito. And I was like, you're absolutely right, it's the cordito. And then I put that out there, and then sure enough, like people got it, they loved the name. I'm not quite sure how Taco Bell felt, but we're actually doing stuff with Taco Bell now. But that's the cordito. And yeah, that's been knocked off, by the way, as well. Not by someone in Hong Kong, but by a very large company that I don't want to get into it, but it would totally shock you that these people knocked me off. Anyway, so next pain point, too many people in my loft. I had nowhere to sleep. My kids were like going to move out. And I met with my partners at Science, and I said, hey guys, like there's this really interesting business, super high profit margin. Here's the economics. I either need to shut it down or we need to kind of bring it into Science. And because then I was getting into needing real help as well, which Science is, as you guys maybe know, maybe not know, but it's a platform to launch new businesses, and it has deep expertise in all of these areas that I don't necessarily want to become an expert in. Not that there's anything wrong with legal and finance, it's just not my strong suit. So Science came in, and then quite sort of immediately, the Science effect kicked in with kind of where the brand was at, and then we started selling product through Apple. Apple was really exciting because for me as a designer who grew up on Apple products, having them sort of validate that this was a product that they would feel comfortable selling in their store was just, it was a huge sort of confidence booster, and opened up a lot of doors for us. So to date, here's sort of a snapshot. We've sold over 1 million cord tacos. This is kind of a small list, and I share this with you because the big point of this talk was that I never really overthought this cord taco thing. If anything, I underthought it and missed the obvious things like cordito. But for the most part, I just let it happen, even when it meant that I was cutting my fingers and potentially jeopardizing where my kids were going to sleep that night, et cetera. But I kind of let it happen. My walls were completely down. And so to date, we've sold over 1 million cord tacos. We did a collab with Taco Bell, which was probably on the same level as Apple for me, just because Taco Bell validating the cord taco, just amazing. Sold through Apple. Now when you get a job at places like Squarespace, you get a cord taco, just as part of your welcome new hire kit with their logo on it. Most recently, we were at the Correspondents' Dinner at the White House. We had red, white, and blue tacos there. And you can buy cord tacos at Ace Hotel. So there's a few ways that you can kind of get to the taco now. Real quick on e-commerce versus a brick and mortar. Not to be confused with Grain and Mortar, who did this beautiful graphic design work here, by the way. For us, brick and mortar is really expensive. You don't reach a lot of people, and it's really hard. It's just really hard. You really, really need to have a super clear understanding as to why you're going to do a physical storefront, because it will consume all of your resources, all of your time, and a lot of your money. E-com is pretty fantastic because, believe it or not, people all over the world know what a taco is. And the majority of our business actually comes from Asia and in Europe. And without the internet and all of these digital channels, we wouldn't have access to that. And so it's nice. E-com, to think of it this way, when I wake up in the morning in the Pacific time zone, there will be a whole bunch of orders that came in overnight from the rest of the world. I start the day off into the thousands there in sales. And that is just a great way to start the day if you have an e-com business and you're trying to figure out how to pay the bills. I would say that brick and mortar, when you find a store that has really good alignment with your brand, and you trust them to kind of tell your brand story, and I think it's worth maybe showing your products there, but not necessarily to depend on the revenue that's going to bring in. Oftentimes, I'll just do consignment deals with places that I really respect because I don't want to get into the conversation of what can you afford and not afford. I just know what should be on display there, and I trust that they're going to tell the story. So just a quick view on our, kind of our segment. It's this really interesting kind of mix of kind of tech, travel, executive kind of people, but then also sort of like fashionistas, home decor people. Chefs like our stuff a lot. And I think chefs like our stuff because there's this concept called mise en place. Am I pronouncing that correctly? It's where everything kind of has a place, and chefs are really into kind of tools and everything having a place. But it's definitely a global, worldwide business that we're going for here. And that's just kind of it. So the snapshot of our physical business is we're in downtown Los Angeles in the fashion district. We found super cheap space. Our rent there is about 80 cents a square foot, which is a good deal in LA. We have 9 people. We built a factory. One of the biggest and hardest and craziest things that we've ever had to deal with was manufacturing. So obviously there was some interest in manufacturing stuff overseas, and we definitely tried that. But for us, it actually kept us too far from that whole sort of design and development and build process. And so, we figured out how to engage the makers in downtown Los Angeles and then basically facilitate the creation of a factory that's literally across the hall from our design studio. So we talk so much. We go back and forth, and they educate us on what's possible. And that really, in addition to the sort of benefit of the economy here in our country, it's also about just design fidelity and making sure that what you design actually gets built in that way, and then bringing product to market super, super quickly. All of our profit goes back into the business, and we're all made in LA now. The turning point for our business was, and the hardest thing to figure out was how do you go from a cord taco that's a few bucks to then going into sort of higher end goods. And so this product right here, which is called the Mod, was inspired by our partners at Apple. Apple kind of said look, you guys are crushing it with cable organization, but you remember in the 90s, those organizers, the kind of the Filofax, day planner, day runner type things that were customizable? They said you should give that a shot. So we did this thing called the Mod. We launched it last year on June 8th, and it totally changed our business. This is the latest one. This is the Mod 2. And we've actually open sourced. So the way to think about this product is that the shell, which is the kind of main component, there are these inserts that are magnetic. And right now we have a whole bunch of inserts for different lifestyles and different professions. And then we've open sourced the creation of new inserts so that we can get the sort of maker community to contribute more. And so we're getting a lot of fun ideas on that. And then our Instagram. I can't stress enough, this is probably obvious at this point, but our Instagram this time last year was 1,300 followers. Our Instagram now, if you look it up, is about 64,000 followers. And that channel alone has given us the ability to have this really rich, ongoing conversation with the rest of the world. And there's nothing like it. It's one of the most incredible tools if you're trying to sort of, tell your story out there. So really, and most of our Instagram is comprised of just reposts of other people that receive the product, and then we credit them back, and it's been fantastic. One thing about science that I learned there was that whenever someone shares an idea with me now and I laugh, that's the idea that I think is going to be the most successful. And I don't know what it is. When someone said, hey, Mike Dubin has this razor blade subscription business, I laughed. When someone said DogVacay is like Airbnb for dogs, I laughed. And these are some of the most successful businesses. And Cord Taco, when people learn about it, they kind of laugh. And I think it's just an indication that people have never heard about it before. It's kind of ridiculous and probably pretty groundbreaking. So pay attention to that. If it makes you laugh, you should probably get involved. Also, just real quick, everything that we do, even though we have a lot of fun with names, it all starts with real problems. I'm not going to get into it that much, but there are a lot of real problems out there that maybe someone else has tried to solve, but they haven't really solved in the best way. So if you a lot of what we do comes from observational research, and it's having deep respect for companies like IDEO and understanding what it means to kind of stop and watch someone as they try to walk through a door or use a device, or there's so many inspiring problems out there to solve. And by the way, let's start a business that makes money is not a real problem. You can totally do that, but that's a different kind of a design process altogether. Here's some of the ways people have solved the problems that we found inspiring. Toilet paper rolls and Ziploc bags probably account for the majority of cable organizers out there today. Which it kind of works, it's just not the most fashionable thing. This is another workaround that you'll see. You see these everywhere. Little notes above copy machines are great sources of inspiration. And the other thing that I want to leave you with is that the Cord Taco came to me in my own personal most lucid state. It's that period of time when you kind of wake up and you start to kind of get your gears going. But you're also, it's that kind of dreamy state of mind. And some people get into it when they become a little meditative when they're doing the dishes or mowing the lawn or kind of dozing in front of the TV. It's probably a good idea to have a way to record those ideas, because sometimes those ideas are just the most important and kind of real and just, they're not forced. You're not sitting there with a team forcing a brainstorm. They're real, honest ideas that come to you that probably are going to make a lot of sense. That's it. Thanks. Thank you. Oh, yikes. That looks like... Do I have 10 minutes left? Oh, cool. What's next? Questions? Oh, actually, I have one more thing I wanted to share. And that is the mod. I brought a mod. This is the mod 2. There's only 4 of this color made. It's olive, military green. And I talked to Caleb and Trey earlier and Fletch over there and asked how we could give this away. And so the cow here, which I love, doesn't have a name. And so I understand the cow is going to be with the whole identity package for a while. So what I like to do is I like to give the mod away. And here's the rules. You have to tweet your suggestion for the name of the cow, and you have to tweet that, and you have to include @thisisground, @Big Omaha, and then @Kaneko. Because what we're going to do is for every tweet that we see, we're going to donate 50 cents, and then Big Omaha is going to match that, and we're going to give that money to Kaneko. And then the cow is going to have a name. Because the cow totally needs a name, right? It's such a beautiful cow. And then someone will get this mod. It's made out of leather, which used to be part of a cow. So, So, any questions?
So you talked about your organizer being made up of magnets, and that's how you can swap in and out different things. On your picture, you had credit cards. How do you get around the avoidance of like those getting wiped, things on your, anything like that with the magnets?
It's a great question. I mean, the first thing that we were really nervous about and what sent us up to Cupertino to talk to Apple about was magnets and hardware, because I think there's also this myth that magnets can delete hard drives, and I think some of that comes from Breaking Bad. You know that scene? And so when they confirmed that no, not only did, like it would take a super, super strong magnet to mess with your gear, we kind of proceeded. The credit card is one where we don't have a solution for it, to be totally honest. The only thing that we can do is to sort of keep the magnet away from anywhere where the credit card touches. So we do give that some thought, but I haven't figured out. You know who I think is going to beat us to the punch on this is Apple Pay, or when we get, because I think credit cards and keys and those sort of things are being phased out. But in the meantime, we just try to keep the magnets away from the cards. A really great question. What else? By the way, you have to be present to win this. So if you're watching this off of a stream, hopefully you know someone here that can submit your idea. Okay. Tag it at This Is Ground, at Big Omaha, and then whatever Kaneko. Is it at Kaneko? One word? 1111 Kaneko. Okay. Oh, Kaneko 1111. Okay, at Kaneko 1111. There you go. Yes.
Hi, my name is Bob. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I work with a couple of leather workers over in our area, and one of the requests that we get are for RFID shielded products. Is that something that you've experienced or have looked at?
Yeah, we did. At Science, we did a lot of experimentation with RFID. We're now, I feel like our gear is definitely on a path to having sort of some embedded technology. And the stuff that we're playing around with right now is when you buy a mod or a mod laptop case, you get one of these XY beacons, which is a different technology from RFID, but it does help you track where this thing is, because some of the anxiety that happens when you get one of these things is you put $1,000 worth of gear in it, and then you freak out about where it's at. So having technology to track that, having technology to power gear that's in there, so whether that be solar or battery, and then other types of things we're experimenting with, and we're actually trying to embed it so that it's not these separate peripherals. RFID, the kind of jury's out, you know, on sort of how pervasive that technology is really going to become. So we're trying to just be open right now and experiment.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, of course.